Hi, I'm Danny Ammon, and I'd like to inform you about UAP research in Germany, especially about the work and projects of the GEP, Mind the Gap, as we say, or you can call it GEP, however, but what is this ominous GEP? Let's start with that. GEP stands in German for Gesellschaft zur Erforschung des UFO-Phänomens, or Society for the Study of the UFO-Phenomenon. And this organization is actually older than me. I'm 44 now, and this organization was founded in 1972, so I wasn't even alive back then. It's pretty old, but not dusty. And we are a non-profit organization with about 200 members in Germany. So we're pretty much the largest UFO or UAP research organization. You can see the board of directors here in the first picture. I'm included. And our director, Hans-Werner Peiniger, on the right side, was the one who founded the organization. Where he lives in Lüdenscheid, we also have an office and archive. Like this is on the middle picture. I wish it was my living room, but it's not. It's a separate office or archive. This is another thing that is special for our organization, that we do not all the work from our homes, but have a separate place where case investigations are made. You can see the IT equipment here, and also dozens and dozens of books and files are collected. Everything tends to fall down, but I think it's stable for now in the picture. What do? We are a topic-related contact for the general public and for the media in German-speaking countries on the topic of UAP and UFOs. In 2022, when we became 50 years old, sounds crazy to say that, we gave ourselves a new mission statement to sharpen our vision about what the GEP wants to do, where do we want to go in the next 50 years. And we said scientific approaches should be central for any knowledge gain on UAP or UFOs. After all, it's about eliminating the U in these acronyms, right? We also do a little bit of publication. So we have the Journal für UFO-Forschung in German, or Journal for UFO Research. It also has a weird acronym. It's called UFO-F. And many of these issues are available at the AFU, the Swedish Archives for the Unexplained, where lots and lots of UFO-related material is hosted nowadays as PDF. So we thought we'd have to partake in this. We also have a YouTube channel. There's mostly German videos, but we hope to change that. It's also just called UFO, so just look for this on there, and you might find some of our members talking about interesting cases or other news about UAP and UFOs there. This is actually something that's running pretty well these days. So much for the GEP itself. And now we are an organization dealing with UAP or UFOs. What is central to that, or how do I divide dealing with this topic? How do we do it? And how is my presentation structured? This all is pictured here as three different aspects of the same thing, the UAP or UFOs themselves. It's about events after all. Something happened and that made some person report an unexplained sighting experience or anything to us, and then we go investigating that. What happened? Can we gain data on this certain event, or can we gain data on UAP or UFOs as a whole? And then last but not least, of course, from all the events and from all the data we can gather, we want to gain insight, right? We want to find knowledge. We want to eliminate the U in UFO or UAP. We want to make it known. We want to find out what's behind all this. And of course, also, and this becomes apparent in the rest of the presentation, we want to help others gain knowledge about this, because we are the ones having data now, right? We are the ones investigating. So we sit on data and we want to make it available for anyone who is able to analyze these data to gain knowledge, to help each other. Let's start with the events. What's happening there? I just told you we are doing case investigations. We have around 5,600 reported and investigated cases since the year 1972. You can reach us via email. We have a Facebook group. There's several channels of reporting today. Of course, in 1972, this was different. People were, of course, using the phone or writing a mail, but it was way slower back then. And today, most reporters, they wish for a WhatsApp group where they can get also an explanation of what they saw in about 10 seconds. That's not possible, of course, but we try to be active on several ways, also on the internet, to just get people to report cases to us. Our case investigators are distributed all over Germany, and our director, Hans-Werner Peiniger, is the one who leads all of the case investigations. What do we use for that? We have a quite methodical approach, and starting in 2011, we worked out a cross-organizational agreement with other German UFO organizations on the items of a UFO questionnaire, where you can see the pictures here. It's quite large and comprehensive because it's meant to be distributed to UFO reporters who are willing to fill out all the forms and two cases that are interesting. Of course, some of the reported cases, or many of the reported cases, maybe have an easy explanation. For us case investigators, we can give an easy explanation, then maybe a questionnaire is not needed, but wherever it is needed, we have it, and it's also digitally available right now. You can just download it from our website and then try to fill out this PDF form, like the modern way, and then mail that to us. More methods. We've given ourselves research principles about some kind of good scientific practice about how to do these investigations. Is it just phone calls, or is there more involved? Like, how do we treat witnesses or reporters? What do we do with the data that has been gathered? Can we distribute it? Should we just sit on it and give it out to no one? All of these are laid out in our research principles. You can download them at this URL, and there's also a journal publication forthcoming about these. Hopefully also like igniting a discussion about that. Just some bullet points on this. Our focus is towards a standardization of the whole case investigation topic. What you can see here in the last picture is kind of a process diagram. It's not finished yet, so you're not meant to look at the details. That's why I made it so small. But we are working on it, and we are hoping to also distribute or like publish papers on this work and say, what are the steps in a case investigation? What do you do when someone reports an experience about a UFO to you? What do you do right then? What are the steps, and how do you come to a conclusion? What do you do with all the data? How do you store it? Where do you publish it? And so on. We like to put this into a certain process. Like I said, it's not finished yet, but this is meant by standardization. Like we can, once it's finished, so we are happy with it, we can also distribute this and get into a discussion with other organizations, other researchers, other investigators. Are they doing it the same? Are they doing it differently? That will be of interest to us, of course. What else? Events. That's not only relying on witnesses, of course. Today, especially when it comes to UAP, the new acronym, there are attempts to measure them, right? To eliminate witnesses with all of their perceptive issues and the memory issues, the problems that when you deal with people relating to you an experience they had. What could you do? You could establish a monitoring station. You can see just an example that we did here. It's a technical development project. Just some members of our organization, they are interested in this kind of stuff, and they use a Raspberry Pi on it's a small single board computer with a camera module. It has to be bought separately in memory medium. They designed a weatherproof housing. You can see it here. Our director is putting it all together, and there's an independent power supply, so you can carry this thing around. And in the last picture, you see it hooked up to the outside of our office. And what could you do with this? We can keep it hooked up to our office in the hope that UAP or UFOs will once visit our office. Another reason why we established it, but they seem to avoid the place. So if any reporters come and say, like every week I see a UAP up there in the sky, why don't we measure it? I mean, I can take photos, but there must be more. We could send out this thing or just carry it to other places. And there's actually something like this station in Hessdalen today, Of course, these kinds of hotspots are interesting to do measurements. Otherwise, the spontaneous nature of UAP makes it not so simple to like catch it on tape or on a Raspberry Pi, as you would say today. But it is something you can do, so why not do it? Why not combine the two approaches? Like, you do not have to exclude one of these. So let's see if we can gather the same data on a phenomenon with this kind of investigation, with this kind of measurement, as we gather with the witnesses. My personal feeling would be no, but that's just my personal feeling. So why not try it? Okay, that's how we deal about the events. And then I said we gather data. Now, what's this all about? Most of the data that we have on UAP cases looks like this. Excuse all the German. It's just about the principles here. This is an article from our UFO, and this is how we document our cases. So what can you see here? The case has a heading to make it interesting to the reader, of course. Otherwise, they would just not open the journal. So got to make it interesting. Then here seems to be a box with some kind of master data. We seem to have an own case number. We put down the date of the sighting and the time and the place and how many witnesses with their names, just shortened or completely anonymized as they wish when they were born. And some kind of classification seems to be here. Also an identification here. And what's the status of the investigation, which are here closed now because there seems to have been found an explanation for this case. And after all the master data comes a lot of free text. You can see this here. Some of this is italic because it's a direct citation of what the witness said or wrote. And then there are some pictures included. And the whole thing, if you call it data, is meant to be read by people. It's not meant to be processed by a computer, right? So, but this is our starting point. And like I said, we started in 1972. Computers back then, I don't know if you know how they looked, but they looked crazy. So, and there was a lot of effort involved to get stuff like this into the computer. And today, I can just show you a scanned page of our UFO, which is pretty old here. It's number 128. So that's easy today, but it wasn't yesterday. So we have to change our attitude in dealing with all of this data throughout the decades of UFO research that we do today. What do I mean by that? I mean that you can differentiate the data that we have. I just did. I said there's master data, that's structured data, like dates of sightings. They all have the same data type, right? It's dates or times. A computer can work with that, can process that. Unstructured data, not so much. So much free text and maybe names in there, maybe UFO shapes in there, whatever might be interesting or not interesting for research, it's not as easy to process that. Although with modern techniques like AI, machine learning techniques, large language models, this becomes more and more approachable, but with some kind of statistical probability, right? As you might all know, ChatGPT is not correct 100% of the time. And that would also include any algorithms which we might want to use to process unstructured data. So we just need to be aware of this. There's also metadata included, and metadata is totally interesting because it says more about the investigated case, for example. Was there a case investigator? What was the name? Was the investigation on site? Did they personally speak to the experiencer, to the witness? Or was it just a phone call? Was it a discussion on Facebook? Or was it even just a newspaper article that was put into a database? I mean, this differentiates cases with certain quality, and such metadata can be really helpful for any other analysis that you might want to make. But if you want to make such kind of analysis, you might have to do a lot of data cleaning right now, right? Because back in the day, what kind of dot is between the hours and the minutes of the time? Who cares when you just use a typewriter to write it down? But if you are to analyze it with some kind of statistical software, if you make differences in one of these columns, then the computer might say no to this. So the data on UAP that we gathered all over the decades has to be cleaned and has to be prepared if you want to do some kind of analysis or like visualization that I'm about to show you, or even do machine or deep learning things. So data quality on UAP, however gathered, however measured, is absolutely vital to do anything about this data, to gain knowledge. I'll come to that later, but that's the goal of it, right? So what do we do? Look at this dashboard, for example. One of our colleagues, Ralf, who's here today, has built this. He's fluent in this kind of software. And this is just to show you what you can do when the data is cleaned, is pre-processed. Might still contain some quality issues, but they come up here. Like if you do, for example, this distribution all over Germany, we've talked about that. Maybe you can see errors in the places recorded in the data, or about the distributions of the identified cases, or about the distributions of UFOs versus IFOs. Everything can just be looked at here. And this is visualization. It's telling a story about the data that you've gathered. And this is helpful to just get an insight about what is done in your organization or in other organizations. I'll come to that later, but of course the data of one organization is not that interesting. The data of many organizations is, of course, totally interesting. So this is just the first step in doing it. And what do you have to do? I just talked about it. Technicians call it an ETL process. You have to extract, you have to transform, you have to load. That's what you have to do whenever you come across data where you don't know the structure of, or where there is no real structure of yet. You have to get the raw data from any sources and then make it ready for use, like transform it to your beloved format and to your beloved statistics tool, and then just analyze and tell a story with it to gain some insight, gain some knowledge. Like this is what you do with all this data. And if it's done differently in each organization, for each researcher, for each investigator, you have to do it all over again whenever you want to include another data source. And this, of course, gives exponential problems in the future when we want to gain knowledge, like internationally, about UFOs or UAP. So is there a solution to that? Maybe an approach, and it's called FAIR data. This is quite hyped in science right now because it's part of the open data and fair data approaches that say what researchers do in science should be transparent from the beginning to everyone who likes to understand and comprehend what is done here. And that means data that you worked with should be findable. Where is it actually? Is every data on UAP that we would need to answer some question, some hypothesis findable for us? I guess not. So that's not an easy thing to do. Also accessible. Maybe you find the data, but you can't access it for whatever reason. That's also a problem. So data should be accessible to do research on it. Interoperability is what I've just talked about before. Do you have to do ETL each time because there's different data structures? Everyone designs and maintains their own database. They all differ from each other, but the topic is all the same as UFOs or UAP. So why not make interfaces or make a common data model? I'll come to that right now. Reusability is the last but not least one. If you already did analysis, if you already gained insight, if you already produced results, make all of these also available, because someone else might be working with these results, like stepping a step further, using data that has been analyzed before to do another analysis, to do a replication study, something like this. So this is its principles about how data should be treated, how data should be if you want to work with it scientifically. Findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. And as long as we use different databases, it's not. And as long as data is hidden and not usable, it's not. I mean, it's not easy to achieve these. Also in scientific communities, this is known. It's not true that all scientific data adheres to the FAIR principles right now. Of course not. This is something to strive for. This is something to try to achieve. And what I say is we might want to achieve this too. So we might want to deal with how can we store information about UAP, UFO experiences, events in a database, how can we transform this from one database to another? Should there be open interfaces, for example? And if we have those, can we do analysis on different databases through these interfaces, like easily? I mean, the hard way, I just sketched several times. Like it's doing ETL over and over again. It's really a hard way. But once you have accomplished this task and there is compatibility, there is interoperability between different technical solutions, then analysis and visualizations, and of course the pursuing of certain hypotheses, like let's look in the data for my research question, I want to answer it, becomes much more easy as if you would just, oh, I need to start with this database because if I include more data, I would have to write more ETL processes, more analysis processes. And of course, as I already said, any type of interesting AI or ML services could also profit from common interfaces, a common data model, something like this. And of course, we should not start from scratch here. UFO databases accompany the topic since its beginning. I mean, in the beginning, computers looked weird, I already told you, but I mean, from the start, people were trying to build databases on this. And every person, every organization that does this comes up with their own idea about how to structure it. And they've made up their mind. I mean, they've had reasons for structuring their database the way they did. So I think it's worth the effort to analyze that and find out what they do, why they do it, and why the next database differs from the first one. What's the difference? Why did they do it differently? And maybe from all of this work, we can find out what we have in common. That's why it's called common data model. And it's a common data model that paves the way for interfaces that allow analysis, visualizations, or even AI and ML on all of the UAP data, like worldwide. That's a vision now. Last but not least, why do we do all this? How do we do all this? I've touched upon, but why do we do all this? We want to gain knowledge. Like I said, eliminate the U. In the GEP, we not only established a database and did analysis and dashboards, we are also interested in other databases. I just touched upon this, but we have several projects that try to use these data to gain knowledge. And the first one was called Project Good UFO. It adheres to the old Alan Henry's classification from the UFO handbook. And we use this after the investigation of a case to give it, put it in a certain category so that we can differentiate. And that's what was meant by Henry. He wanted to say with good UFO that these are unexplained cases that are not easy to explain. So we looked into our files and into our database, and at that time, we found 9 unexplained cases in this category. So what we did was re-examined all the files, all the data on these cases. It was just a lot of hard work. It was not just a click. And what we wanted to do is to find, are there indications for any conventional explanations to these cases now? Or do the data point to a coherent unknown phenomenon behind all of these 9 unexplained cases? Or would it be several unknown phenomena? I mean, even this simple question is not, we do not have any kind of hypothesis for today, any kind of valid approach to answer about UFOs today. So we said, let's start with our own data. I mean, we've gathered it, it's ours, so let's just start by that. Unfortunately, the results were inconclusive because it's just 9 cases. It's not enough. So we said, okay, that was good UFO. Why not head over to problematic UFO cases? I mean, we have lots and lots of them, way more than 9. And could be a good starting point for the second project. And then we found out, oh, why did someone give the classification of good UFO to this case, but problematic UFO to this other case? What are the criteria? Let's look it up in the UFO handbook of Alan Henry, and you see the criteria are not that good. They are not that intersubjectively valid. And it becomes a bigger problem when you see what's behind it, because what we want to do, of course, we want to put categories to the strangeness of cases and say the stranger the case, the more it's a good UFO, best UFO, that's so strange that no one can explain it, and so on. what is explicitly strange in UFO experiences. There are certain works on that. So we tried to gain an insight on that. We read all those old books and papers, but we didn't find a really good criteria catalog for strangeness, for saying, okay, any of our case investigators, they have some kind of checklist right now. What is a problematic UFO or what is a good UFO? We don't have that. So as long as we don't have that, we might have problems with going on with this kind of project, because the categories behind all that, they are not that objectively valid. So we set up another project, and it was called Project Strangeness because we ran out of project name ideas. And what we tried to do here is objectify strangeness, again, using the cases of our own, the GEP cases. What we do here follows a social science approach. It's called grounded theory, and it's a methodical approach on how to deal with qualitative data. So the people gather and they also take a look into the case files. I have an example right here with something called a solid light phenomenon. We do not know what it is. We do not know if it's true. We only know what the witness said. And he describes like this typical solid light that seemed to have a physical quality that's unknown, that's anomalous. And this could be some kind of strangeness. This could be something strange, something anomalous. But is it really? And what else do we have? What criteria do we have? And when there's a new case coming in, how strange is it? How do we objectify that? And we wrote memos on all of the old files and cases that we included. And then we discussed about this and tried through this discussion, several rounds are planned. So it's going to be a long work. Through these discussion approaches of experts to find out if we can get a common opinion on strangeness factors. And I can't give you the final result here because, as I said, this is going to be a long work, and we've just started, so to speak. It goes on for some years right now, but still, we just started. But it turns out that a lot of strangeness criteria are actually strange in context. Like, there's no objective strangeness factor, no objective anomaly. If an object is really, really close and it's dead silent, that might be strange, that might be anomalous. If an object is far away and it's silent, suddenly not so strange anymore. So silence as a whole is not strange. It has to be seen in context. And a lot of factors or criteria that we found pointed to these contexts. There are just some that are strange on their own, and the solid lights are one of these. But it's not as many as we thought there might be. So even to say what's the quality of the unexplained cases is not that easy, even today. So we should work on that, because this is a basis for any further analysis. If we want to analyze the cases with high strangeness, we better know what we talk about. So it's still going on. Something like that. Third, last but not least, project that we're doing today deals with the Oz factor. It might be known to you. It's when close encounters with UFOs cause a kind of extreme disruption of the sense of coherence of an observer. I gave you this sketch here from a case of ours because that's what happened here. There was a female witness in the 90s that saw this object. And before it appeared, she told us there was kind of a storm going on. Suddenly, in the city where she lives in, everything began to sound like a war was starting. And then suddenly there was dead silence, silence again, as if the city had been closed off. And then the object appeared and the UFO experience began, so to speak. What do we make of this? The Oz factor is known for a long time. Jenny Randalls from Great Britain described it. But there is something in medicine that is pretty similar, and it's called depersonalization and derealization experience. And these can occur when you have fatigue, when you are exhausted, when there's stressors that make you stressed. And what if the experience that you have and the Oz factor that you experience also are not linked to each other? What if this is misinterpreted as an anomalous side effect that is inherent to the phenomenon and in reality has nothing to do with the phenomenon? That's a hypothesis we made. It's a kind of null hypothesis, right? The Oz factor doesn't exist. It's not anomalous. And I don't know if it's true or if it's false. I want to find out. That's what it's about. So we want to verify this hypothesis. And how do you do that now? You can just compare UFO and IFO cases, because if the Oz factor is truly something anomalous, it should only occur in the unexplained cases. And there where similar experiences occur with the identified cases, where we found out, oh, what the person saw was just a drone, and but they have a similar Oz factor experience. That might point in the direction that Oz factor and the UAP or IFO are not truly linked. So to carry out this project, we have to have data on UFOs as well as IFOs. And our data are actually not ready yet. So again, to show you, this is a project, it's a totally interesting question. It's a totally interesting research question in the field of UAP or UFOs, but we cannot deal with it just yet. We have to do the dirty data work first. And this is what the people carrying out the project, I'm not involved in here, but I know that they are doing the dirty data work just right now to get the interesting IFO cases. And the dirty data work here means starting with reading, because what we have is, like I just showed you, free text, unstructured data, and everything about, suddenly the whole place became that silent. There seemed to have been no birds anymore, or I couldn't hear anything, or I got problems with sight, or suddenly a humming was in the air. That stuff is in the free text. It's buried. It's not as structured information available. So if you want to do it now, you need to search for it in all of the free text that we have. And this is, of course, making it hard to carry out these kind of interesting projects. So as you see, again, data management is a necessary precursory work for doing the interesting stuff. As usual, in data science, we know that 80% of the time you spend with cleaning and preparing your data, so that the rest of the 20% of your time you get to the interesting stuff. So don't worry, this is not inherent in our kind of research. Any kind of scientific field has to do that as well. So this is just a short overview to maybe start a discussion. Just to repeat, these are the three pillars that the GEP is working on in Germany right now. We are continuing our case investigations. We are continuing with getting our data clean and nice, not just for us, but also for others as well, to, in the end, do the interesting projects that we just took a glimpse into, gain insight into what seems to be anomalous. As I said, just a starting point. If you want to know more, there's a journal paper on all of that we wrote. We can just scan the code here, or it has a DOI where you can look it up in the Journal of Animalistics. And very recently, we just said, let's make our case data set with all the master data publicly available right here. It's uploaded on Zenodo. So if anyone wants to do nice analysis on that, that's just what we said. Why just us? Somebody else might come up with an interesting case or an interesting hypothesis, just as the one or the ones I showed you. Why should they not use our data? So this is the first step in a kind of open data approach. Make publicly available what we are allowed to make publicly available. Of course, data on the witnesses are protected by the GDPR because it's personal data, but this is not included here. So it's all cut off, but all the other interesting data is included. So if you're interested, take a peek into that. We'd be happy to receive any comments also on data quality or on how to enriching it. Would be a totally interesting discussion. So I hope I could give you some small insight in what we're doing in the GEP in Germany. Anything else is also on this URL. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'm looking forward to your comments and questions right now. Thanks.